How's it going, YouTube? My name's Marcus and welcome to Matmoto. In this episode I'm going to talk to you about where to buy your BMW Airhead motorcycle, what to look out for both generally when buying a used motorcycle and specifically with the old BMW R-Series bikes in mind. So let's do it. Okay, first of all, where should you look for your bike? This first section of the video is intended for folks looking to buy a bike in the US, and as a result it's possibly not as relevant for folks living in other parts of the world. So if you prefer to just the tips on what to look for when you're checking this bike over, feel free to skip on to the next section. The first place I always look is Craigslist. Every time I go there I find something that I could make work. Honestly, it's a bit of a dangerous site to go on and search bikes because there's so many options on in any one day. If you're looking for a specific model like an R80 in my case, or a specific year number, like older than 1981 in my case, you might have to wait a while and be patient. One of the main advantages of using a website like Craigslist is that it's got search capabilities and filters. So you can filter on local area and set mile ranges, filter by vehicle specifics like mileage, price, title status. You can filter by private seller or dealership. For an old bike like this that you're going to tear down and rebuild, I really don't think it's worth paying the premium that the dealership charges, but I'd certainly recommend getting a bike that has a clean title. Some of the downsides of Craigslist though are, it is a little riskier because you're going to meet a stranger and you may or may not have cash on you to purchase the bike. There have been some horror stories of opportunists taking advantage of situations like this. So just be careful, bring a friend and meet in a safe place. The second place I looked were specialist motorcycle or BMW Airhead forums. Websites like advrider.com and airheads.org have rooms dedicated to selling motorcycles, and I've linked those, the Airhead specific forums in the description below. I think one of the main advantages to this is that if you're buying a motorcycle from an active forum member, you get a feel for who you're buying from, as well as maybe some of the work that they've documented doing on the motorcycle. It to some degree takes a little bit of the risk out of buying from a complete stranger, knowing that the person selling the bike is at least passionate about it. The real downside here is that you can't filter by location and you have to be patient for the right motorcycle to come on and come up for sale at the right time for you. Okay, on to the next step. You've found a bike you're seriously interested in. What are the next steps? Before you go to see the bike, ask the owner not to start the bike before you arrive. This might not be possible if it's being ridden to the location that suits you both, but if you're going to visit the seller, there's no reason why they can't leave that bike cold and you can cold start it when you arrive. We're going to break the inspection into two parts. Part A, bike cold inspection, and Part B, bike warm plus test ride. So here are the bike cold checks. Check paperwork and VIN numbers. When you arrive, the very first thing you want to check is, does the title VIN number match the number stamped on the motorcycle? On the R80/7, the VIN number can be found on the flat rectangle of space on the lower left side of the engine as you sit on the bike. This number should match the VIN number in the title document. If it matches, then check the VIN number stamped onto the frame of the bike, which on the R80s is on the front right hand side of the frame between the gas tank and the front forks. If either of these numbers are different, for whatever reason, or the VIN number on the title document is different, irrespective of the explanation, something's up and I would likely walk away. While you have the title document in your hand, you should make sure that there are no liens against it and that it's not a duplicate title document. And it's a little awkward, but ask to see the seller's ID and make sure the names on the seller's ID match the seller and the names exactly on the document to make sure this person can actually sell you this motorcycle. The next thing you want to do is just a general inspection, what people call kicking the tires. What you're asking yourself here is, has this bike been taken care of? It doesn't matter where you start your inspection. What you're doing is building up a big picture of how this bike has been treated. While you're doing this part of the walk around with the bike still off, still cold, you're asking the owner as many questions as you can about the history of the bike, again, to build up this mental model of the life that it's had. Here's a non-exhaustive list of some of the things you could look out for. Check the tank. Has it been dented or scratched? Small dents are not too difficult to repair. It's not that big a deal, but they may indicate that the bike has been in an accident or been on its side at some stage. And by the way, if you're buying a 40-year-old bike, chances are that it has at some stage been on its side. Here's my tank that I bought on the motorcycle I bought from Craigslist, for example, just to give you a feel for my level of comfort with that. While you're looking at the tank, open the fuel cap and have a look inside. Does it look clean? No rust? Old paint floating around in there? Has someone taken care of this tank? After the tank, check the clutch and brake levers to see if they're bent or broken. If they are, it might indicate the bike has been dropped. Are they new? Another possible red flag. Why buy levers for a bike that you're selling? So, damaged or new clutch or front brake means take a closer look at the cylinder heads on these boxer engines. Moving down from the tank, look at the cylinder heads. Are they scratched or scuffed, or do they look new? If they're new, why did the owner replace them? With these R80 cylinder heads extending out, they can easily be damaged in a fall, so get as much information here as possible. Sticking with the cylinders, have a look at the cylinder fins. Remember, these fins are used to keep the bike cool, so are they damaged? Do they have lots of chips and dings from years of rocks chipping away at them? Have a good close look and see what you think. Next, check where the cylinders connect to the engine housing. There are 2 rubber grommets under each cylinder. Check for signs of leaking from here. Time to get on your knees and look under the engine. Any signs of oil dripping or pooling? Does the gasket between the oil pan and engine look clean and free from oil? If the bike is parked near or in its usual spot, are there signs of oil in the pavement where it rests? If there is, ask why. Mine was an oily mess, by the way, when I bought mine, but I was reasonably happy that I would be able to resolve this when rebuilding, so let's see if I was right. Next, check the oil dipstick for both level and colour. If the oil's a dark black, not a big deal, but it looks like it hasn't been changed in a while, and again points to maybe this person hasn't taken very good care of this bike. While you're looking under the bike, check the frame, kickstand, engine and exhaust manifold for signs of rust. A little rust is not a major problem, but excessive rust is a red flag that this bike has not been taken care of and could mean worse problems hidden away in the engine waiting for you. Also try and judge, is it straight? This is super tricky, unless it's a real mess, but look to see if the frame is true and not warped or bent anywhere, indicating an accident and may actually mean that you have to scrap the frame. Look for any dents or fractures in the wheel rims. Check the tires. Are they worn bald? If you want to be super thorough, check the tire date codes. I'll leave a link in the description to a Revzilla guide on exactly how to do that. On the front rim, check the brake disc. Is it rusty from lack of use and sitting outside? Does it have grooves in it from where the previous owner didn't change the brake pads in time? Chances are that if they haven't even changed the brake pads, they haven't done some of the more important routine services and major milestone services that were needed to keep this bike healthy. Okay, so you're all done with the cold bike walk around. You've got a general feeling about how well this bike has been cared for, as well as an idea how honest the seller is about some of the issues that exist in the bike. It's finally time to start it. These old bikes often throw out a lot of white smoke and can rattle about a bit when they start, so ask the seller to do the startup sequence for you so that you can watch. And also it gets a little tricky because you need to pull the choke and the carburetors out on these old machines. This is done with a metal switch on the left hand side under the petrol tank, but it could also be done individually on each of the carbs depending on how it's been set up. And don't be too alarmed if it's a little unsteady or irregular in its rhythm when it first starts. It needs a minute or two to settle down, so just push the choke back in and let it warm up. So the initial cloud of white smoke has passed, hopefully. The choke is back in and the bike is running warm. What are we looking for here? At this stage we're really doing 2 things. We're listening and we're waiting. Listening. First, we're listening for any knocking sounds on either side of the engine. We want to crouch down next to the cylinder heads and really listen. Second, we listen to see how the bike sounds when you gently rev the throttle. Make sure it's in neutral. Does anything get louder or does it become irregular? Place a hand on each end of the exhaust pipes, carefully not to burn yourself. You don't have to keep your hand on it, but just enough to feel the pressure. Does the pressure feel the same coming out of each of the exhausts? While the bike is heating up, we're waiting to see any engine warning lights coming on. To help kill time, you can check the headlights and high beams are working, that the indicator lights on the front and back are working, and that the brake lights and brake feel good when you sit on the bike. Now, get off the bike one last time and look for any oil drops forming around the engine, gearbox, etc. check it over, all of it, one last time. Hopefully no red flags here, so now it's time to test ride. In my experience, I would only ever let someone test ride a motorcycle if they paid full price for it first, gave me cash, knowing that if they crashed it or decided to never come back, I wouldn't be out of pocket. So expect to do the same from the seller when you're working with that person. One last thing before you take it on your test ride, check the brakes, check the brakes, check the brakes. Before you get on a motorcycle you've never ridden before, check the brakes. I can't emphasize it, how important it is. With the R80/7, the single disc on the front and the drum brake on the back means that stopping is likely faster putting your legs out and dragging your heels along the ground. It just doesn't stop. So expect the same from your vintage ride. Treat it with respect and go easy. You're really just trying to get up and down the gears to make sure that they're all there and that the bike is running reasonably well. This is not your Rossi moment. And that's all the advice I can give when buying your project bike. I hope it was helpful, but if there's something I didn't answer here or that you think I missed something very important or an area to check when you buy a vintage BMW, drop a comment down below. In the next video, I'll be running through my own Craigslist buy, some of the problems I spotted when I was buying it, and some of the things I didn't. So if you're interested, you can subscribe and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks, bye.